Hey, Jules Plus Vegan, and as always, welcome to my channel. And for those of you who are new, I know you can benefit. People, this is part 2 on why go vegan and why you need to go vegan now. We are absolutely out of time. We are so out of time. And if you didn't catch part 1, please do. This is top reasons why you should go vegan now. This is by vegan.com, making vegan easy. There's nothing easier once you decide that you're not going to eat any plant-based products. And forgive me, animal products anymore, and only do plant-based. So no more dead meat, no more dairy. I know it's overwhelming, but there's so many reasons, and you've got to listen to these videos to know why. And of course, I will include this article in the description of the video. So please go through yesterday because that was like an hour, and this one is going to be shorter, but I am going to encourage you to take a couple of breaks to ensure that you get all the good information that you need. And again, because the article is connected, you can easily go through and just click on the hyperlinks. So this was the introduction. I'm just going to read it again, and then I'll just say what the key points were down to the part of the article where I stopped yesterday. So it reads, a vegan lifestyle prevents a tremendous amount of animal slaughter and suffering. It offers a potent way to shrink our environmental footprint, especially in regard to climate change. And a well-planned vegan diet can fuel the highest levels of fitness while reducing our risk of various chronic diseases. Plus, the food is insanely delicious and it becomes more widely available every year. And for Jules Plus Vegan, if you just go to my search bar right there, not the main search bar, but the one within Jules Plus Vegan, I have everything for all the things I've healed from thyroid to kidney disease to migraines to familial tremor. Like, the list goes on and on. It really is miraculous. And yes, I'm sneezing throughout, so I'm going to be pausing the video. It's after 10 o'clock at night and it's still 90 degrees. Which is much better than 112, right? We're having a heat wave in California. But that said, of course, the air conditioner's going. And in the high desert, when you have that constant wind, we have to change that filter like every 3 weeks, honestly. So bear with me, please, if I'm pausing, seemingly pausing. I never edit. I'm a one and done girl. But I will be stopping occasionally for sneezing. Okay, so the first thing was to define a vegan diet, and it says vegan diets exclude all food produced by or derived from animals, which is meat, fish, dairy, eggs, honey. I usually tell people anything that had a mother, and then of course derived from animals would be of course pumping the milk, stealing the honey, taking the eggs, right? Okay. You can also define veganism as completely plant-based eating. So the difference is plant-based eating absolutely is vegan, but the concept of veganism is when you literally are taking a stance of the right to sentient beings, that all animals have a right to live, all of them have a purpose, and all of them are feeling. And that's kind of the difference right there. Okay, so let me keep going. The next part was the virtue of plant-based diets. Why do they matter? The next was the joy of exploring plant-based foods. The next was why go beyond plant-based foods, like why even try and have a greater understanding of the vegan plight. And then animal cruelty and agribusiness. So serious. The standard slaughterhouse, stunning methods for killing. Stunning is an understatement. And all the terrible numbers. The slaughter of layer hens and dairy cows, why they in particular are even more tortured, including their little male babies. The crowding, confinement, and cruelty within those slaughterhouses. The inhumanity of factory farming in general, by definition. The meat, milk, and eggs, and why they get cheaper than ever. Of course, government subsidies and all of that. The crowding of factory farming and why it's even more painful and detrimental to the animals. Cattle confinement and what they do in that situation. The mutilation at factory farms, how they cut off or actually burn off the beaks, how they it's just so horrific. You gotta take the time. We owe it to the animals to take the time. Selective breeding and why that inbreeding is a problem. Early deaths in meat chickens for all the things that we do to get them to grow so quickly to meet demand, such a joke. The egg industry cruelties, what they do, grinding up the birds while they're still alive, the little male chicks, because there's no purpose for them, making them grow exponentially fast, giving them no room to move. I mean, I explained it in the other one. The mastitis in dairy cows, their poor teats being inflamed and infected, and how that looks. Undercover farming videos, and the people getting killed for producing them. That is straight up. And again, there's a ton of hyperlinks in here where it shows the animals being abused and tortured. Mass casualty events where they absolutely kill millions and millions of chickens at a time. If there's any threat of disease, kill them all. Who cares? 1.4 million farm animals, big deal. Any threat of disease, turn off the circulation and, oh God, it's so terrible. Sinking ships with tons and tons of animals, ventilation shutdowns, all the edges that are rough, all the terrible things going on in those factory farms. People, this is a brand new article. It references 2022. Okay, it's not like, oh, well, good, things have improved. That's a hard no. How do vegan diets protect the environment? So important. The horrific use of antibiotics on animal farms and why they affect us in our body, in the runoff in our water. Eating with the planet in mind. The importance of going vegan and why that considers the planet. Animal manure, again, the disgusting runoff, the terrible CO2 emissions, the poisons that cause, and then the dead zones in our water, like the Gulf of Mexico, where nothing can grow. So horrific. Animal agriculture's contribution to climate change, why it's so detrimental and far exceeds all emissions regarding trains, planes, automobiles. Like, that is nothing. We have to go back to the animals. The air pollution associated with animal agribusiness and how thousands of people a year get cancer if they live anywhere near there. Over 13,000 Americans dying each year just from the air pollution being generated. Summing up factory farming key strategies. What is their end game, from breeding programs to maximizing the stocking density, to automation, to exploiting workers, to lobbying. I mean, it goes on. And that brings us to part 2. And I had to just go through that for a minute, because for those who didn't even see part 1, and again, I highly recommend it, and I will include it in the description of this video. I wanted you to get a sense of what you're missing. And I want you to have the courage to go in there and click on those hyperlinks and watch some of that, because you can't undo what you've seen, and we owe it to the animals to see it. Like, that is straight up. Okay, so here's the big question for part 2. Why not just avoid factory farmed foods? I mean, what's the big deal, right? They're still personal farms. Let's see what's up. Unless specifically labeled to the contrary, you can assume that every non-vegan food you purchase comes from a factory farm. As we've seen, an unending variety of cruelties occur at these places. Millions of omnivores have pushed back against factory farming by demanding higher animal welfare standards. Most natural food stores and supermarkets sell specifically labeled animal products from farms that promise better animal welfare. Additionally, small-scale meat, milk, and egg producers run booths at thousands of local farmers markets, saying, we know these animals, we have, simpatico, they give, we provide for them, they provide for us, like all of that. At their best, these smaller farms deliver genuine animal welfare improvements. The end game is always going to be death, right? That's mainly because they refuse to partake in the cruelest farming practices, particularly with regard to confinement, praise God, and crowding. These animals actually breathe and run and eat grass and play outside, And with this reduced crowding, farmers can eliminate mutilations like beak searing and tail clipping. That's because animals raised under good conditions rarely attack or bully one another. Unfortunately, the sustainable price premium commanded by higher welfare food exerts an overpowering temptation on producers to cheat. It just costs more to do the right thing, right? Few people in business face so much incentive to deceive, nor can they get away with it so easily. All too often, farmers exaggerate or outright lie about the standards for animal care. Just like at factory farms, every small-scale producer faces the strongest financial temptation to push limits. Maybe not initially, but it ultimately will come in time for most, Since the cost of delivering genuinely good animal welfare is so high, there are always farmers willing to cut corners. In fact, some so-called organic farms are actually factory farms in every sense of the word. While they may use higher quality animal feed and refrain from using antibiotics, animal welfare remains deplorable. At one point, several of America's largest organic dairies exploited a regulatory loophole that allowed them to keep their cows confined indoors 310 days out of every year. This is what I mean in the last video when I said, as long as just one chicken can technically come outside for 10 minutes a day, they can label the whole thing free range. This is the game. So 55 days a year, they can be outside, and presuming they even live, 310 days out of every year, they're confined to that indoor space where there's not even enough room to rotate around. In 2022, organic milk giant Fairlife agreed to pay $21 million for false advertising after an animal rights group released shocking videos, the undercover videos, right, exposing Fairlife's cruel treatment of cows. Fairlife, oxymoron, yeah? Anyway, again, these are hyperlinks. Come into this article, please. Okay, animal welfare certification programs. Again, we saw this in Seaspiracy, where people would desperately pay to get the label, but in no way were they living that truth. To avoid breaches of trust, food service companies and groceries rely on a variety of animal welfare certification programs. Much like hotels are typically rated from 1 to 5 stars, one leading program offers 5 different tiers of animal welfare. That way, at least in theory, the consumer can decide for herself which animal husbandry practices are acceptable and choose products accordingly. Is it okay to sort of torture an animal? Of course, every welfare certification program depends on farmers honoring their animal care promises. For these programs to succeed in their mission, it's imperative that they quickly catch any farmers who cheat. This, in turn, demands carefully monitoring and strict enforcement by the certification agency. It's fair to say that in the real world, such monitoring is expensive, occasional, and unreliable. Checking up on your local farms. Alternately, you can do your own monitoring. Who has the time or the will, right? This requires meeting the sellers of animal products at your local farmers market and then personally visiting their farms to evaluate the conditions. Me, I have better things to do with my time. I don't want to spend my precious Saturday afternoons driving out to distant farms. Much easier, I think, to simply avoid foods where egregious abuses of consumer trust and animal welfare are commonplace. If there's no demand, they won't produce it. Do you get that? They always follow the money, right? In this respect, laziness surely ranks as one of the most underappreciated reasons to consider a vegan diet. You undoubtedly have more pleasant ways to spend your time than investigating animal welfare compliance. And why expend all that effort when there exists such an abundance of delicious vegan food? Again, whether it's junk food vegan, plant-based vegan, raw vegan, there's Tons for the asking. Animal exploitation that can't be remedied. And anyway, no matter how you strive to purchase only the highest quality animal products, numerous problems remain unaddressed. As just one example, there is simply no way to eliminate slaughter, the endgame. Even the highest welfare producers kill their dairy cows and layer hens well before midlife as yields decline. What's more, many farms are legally prohibited from slaughtering their animals on site. Legally prohibited from slaughtering their animals on site? So much of the time, free range and pasture raised animals end up at the very same slaughterhouses that kill factory farmed animals. Diving a little deeper, the use of heirloom breeds is all but unheard of in commercial agriculture. So even at the very best pasture-raised farms, the animals suffer the same breed-related health problems as their factory-farmed counterparts. Don't eat animals anymore. Don't drink milk. Don't use eggs anymore. It's the only solution. In short, the more you care about sourcing animal products free of needless suffering, the messier and more unsatisfying your task becomes. Counterintuitively, it's therefore not vegans, but omnivores who face the greatest inconvenience when it comes to conscientious eating. That's because omnivores confront a barrage of tasks and expenses if they are to ensure acceptable welfare standards. By contrast, aspiring vegans have it much easier. Their primary task is to seek out delicious new foods. Now, every time they talk about E. coli breaking out in romaine lettuce, it's because of the runoff from the animal waste, right? No one can escape the nightmare until we just stop the demand. Okay, a word about seafood. Most vegan-related writing doesn't devote much space to seafood, or else ignores the topic entirely. For people moving in a vegetarian direction, fish is typically the last food to go. So true. Oh, I don't eat meat. I only eat fish. Well, I don't eat meat anymore. I just eat chicken and fish. You do know that's meat, right? Well, yeah, but it's not the same. Did it breathe? Did it have a mom? Okay. But there are strong reasons to avoid seafood. They ain't playing. Hello, mercury poisoning. Hello, parasites. You can even make the case that seafood belongs at the top of the list of foods to give up. Can you believe that? I need to repeat that. You can even make the case that seafood belongs at the top of the list to give up. This is especially true for crabs and lobsters, since these animals are killed by being boiled alive. All evidence suggests their suffering is excruciatingly painful. Duh. Okay, can fish suffer? Did God make them? What about fish caught by nets or fishing lines? Are they capable of suffering? And if so, how severe? Have you ever interviewed one at death? Studies definitively prove that fish can feel pain. They usually die by suffocation, isn't that ironic? And deep water fish die a particularly agonizing death as they're pulled to the surface. Their eyes bulge out and organs rupture from depressurization. You know how divers have to take the time coming up, or they'll end up getting bubbles in their blood and they can die? But they just pull those fish right up and don't expect a consequence? Really? The environmental cost of fishing. The fishing industry ranks among the world's greatest environmental menaces, and the worldwide appetite for fish is insatiable. Go up into my search and put in Seaspiracy. I did a whole thing on that movie. Since 1960, the amount of seafood pulled daily from the world's oceans, rivers, and lakes has more than tripled. As a result, fish populations are in steep decline, and that's a hyperlink. There simply isn't enough fish to go around. Duh. They can't replenish themselves that quickly. And in some parts of the world, populations utterly depend on fish for survival. With all this in mind, if people must eat fish, perhaps it should only go to regions that would face hunger without it. It's a very small population. Enforcing regulations against overfishing poses intractable problems. Fishing boats commonly switch off their electronic tracking equipment to evade the enforcement of catch limits. And all too often, regulators do little too late. One prime example involves the waters off Newfoundland, which were once among the world's most abundant cod fisheries. While authorities dickered and delayed, overfishing so ravaged the ecosystem that the cod forever vanished. They might want to check a McDonald's. Say McDonald's little fish fillets are cod, and they take most of it in all the world. They're one of the greatest consumers in all the world of codfish. Fishing fleets disseminate not just the targeted fish, but every sort of marine life. The world's fishing boats are constantly pulling thousands of kilometers of nets through the sea. These nets ensnare every sort of animal, suffocating countless dolphins, sea turtles, sharks, and even sea birds. Some shrimp boats hauling 4 to 6 kilograms of marine life for every kilogram of shrimp. For 1 kilogram of shrimp, which was the objective, they kill 4 to 6 kilograms of marine life. Sure you have to have that fish fillet? Fish farms. Fish farms are no solution to overfishing, and in fact exacerbate the strain on ocean resources. What's more, the crowding and welfare standards at fish farms are every bit as deplorable as at any factory farm. Fish farms commonly suffer infestations of gruesome parasites called sea lice. Oh, I've seen it before. They literally are eating the skin right off of the fish. These parasites attach themselves to the fish and eat away at the skin, causing open lesions. And guess what? They use them for food anyway. Because people won't see that part, because when they see them packaged in the grocery store, it'll look all pretty and a fresh cut with bright dye to make it look really healthy. Genetic modification causes widespread deformities and even deafness among farmed salmon. Perhaps most disturbing, these fish routinely escape into the open ocean where they mate with wild fish. This interbreeding corrupts the gene pool of native fish species who are already threatened by overfishing. Animal welfare and animal rights. Now that we've seen how brazenly the food industry exploits both farm animals and marine life, let's consider how to address the problem. The two fundamental concepts of the animal protection movement, animal welfare and animal rights, offer powerful approaches, and those are hyperlinks. Under animal welfare is a simple but potent concept inseparable from common decency. Its core message is, if you're going to use animals for food, cosmetics, or anything else, you are morally obligated to eliminate needless suffering. Unfortunately, that's easier said than done. A great deal of the suffering that stems from raising animals for food is expensive and difficult to eradicate. It's also tricky to verify that farmers comply with welfare standards since, as we've seen, they have a strong incentive to cheat. And like I said in Seaspiracy, they showed that the moderators who went on the boats were killed. Like over 18 of them were murdered. Animal welfare concerns inspire some people to go vegan and others to switch to pasture-raised alternatives. Many omnivores who start thinking about animal welfare decide they can't make peace with slaughter. This decision doesn't just close the door on consuming meat. It also rules out eggs and dairy products, since virtually all layer hens and dairy cows go to slaughter as well. Animal rights. The animal protection movement's most important idea relate not to animal welfare, but to animal rights. Animal welfare condones the use of animals as long as we attempt to minimize suffering. Animal rights, by contrast, proclaims that animals do not exist for our use, just as it's wrong to falsely imprison somebody, even if that prison is the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. Animal right thinking contends that raising animals for food is wrong, regardless of whether the animals receive decent care. The animal rights literature contains a number of challenging books. To survey this topic, I'll introduce you to 3 crucial concepts: speciesism, subject of life, and utilitarian thinking. Together, they address the why go vegan question with some exceptionally clear thinking. Under speciesism, speciesism is the most simple and most widely used idea within animal rights. This word denotes attempts to justify exploitation based on an animal species. Such rhetoric inevitably ignores more pertinent facts. The question of whether rights are unjustly violated should start by evaluating each individual animal's ability, or lack thereof, to think, feel, and suffer. When an animal's rights are violated, specious thinking is often to blame. An obvious example relates to the fact that by all accounts, pigs are more intelligent than dogs. Yet, the pork industry, standard farming practices would generate a stream of felony cruelty convictions if it treated dogs in the same manner as pigs. That's straight up. Speciesism is cut from the same cloth as racism, sexism, and classism. All of these isms violate an individual's liberties on grounds that are fundamentally arbitrary. The only thing that sets speciesism apart from the others is that it provides an excuse to exploit certain types of animals rather than certain groups of people. Animals as the subject of a life. Every human and every animal experiences their own subject of life. We each have a unique biography and set of experiences. No matter what sort of body we're born into, we've got one incarnation filled with moments related to companionship, family, and interactions with others. While the experience of humans and other animals differs, we each have but one precious and irreplaceable possession: our own fleeting lives. Let's now reflect on why, across every culture, the punishment for murder is invariably severe. The answer is undoubtedly because prematurely ending someone's life is a bell that cannot be unrung. The victim is forever denied the experiences she would have had otherwise, and no remedy for this injustice exists. Certainly, if we agree that murder demands severe punishment because it has unjustly snuffed out a life, we become obligated to consider the implications of animal slaughter in this regard. To cut short an animal's life is the ultimate violation of that being's only opportunity to exist, and to do this for culinary pleasure seems especially problematic, especially when delicious alternatives abound. The subject of a life approach to animal rights can lead people to look at a pig or a chicken and decide, it may not be much of a life, but it's all they've got, and it isn't ours to take. And finally, animal rights and utilitarian thinking. Finally, let's consider the utilitarian philosophy of Jeremy Bentham in his 1975 classic Animal Liberation. Peter Singer applied Bentham's thinking to animal rights with groundbreaking results. Utilitarianism is based on the idea that mortality is expressed by maximizing total joy and minimizing total suffering. It therefore seeks to evaluate every situation in order to produce the greatest amount of pleasure. For instance, more total happiness is created by giving 10 people one sandwich apiece than by handing 10 sandwiches to one person. Utilitarian considerations enable clearer thinking about animal use. Most of us can agree, for instance, that pepperoni is a delicious pizza topping. There is consequently some added joy that comes with being able to order your pizza with pepperoni. But from a utilitarian point of view, it's unethical to value this added joy without weighing it against how the pig suffered to produce this pepperoni. You can make a strong case that the animal suffering arising from a particular non-vegan food far outstrips any joy derived from its consumption. This is especially true today, given that vegan meats, dairy products, and eggs are more delicious and readily available than ever. With each passing year, the argument that non-vegan foods provide unique and irreplaceable pleasures becomes increasingly difficult to entertain. Utilitarianism can inform not just your thinking about food, but also other lifestyle choices like cosmetics, fur, and leather. Nobody would pretend it's possible to calculate joy versus suffering with the precision of crunching numbers on a spreadsheet. But even so, utilitarianism offers a uniquely helpful framework for evaluating the ethics that pertain to any sort of animal use. Choosing a diet that aligns with your values. The concepts of speciesism, subject of a life, and utilitarianism offer ample reason to eat more plant-based foods and to go beyond that to embrace a vegan lifestyle. These approaches lead us to what I consider the crux of the matter. Are you okay with taking a healthy animal who clearly wants to live and cutting her throat? Is slaughtering animals for food a violation of their rights, or is this part of the circle of life? Surely we each owe it to the animals to give the matter some thought. Why go vegan for your health? No diet can guarantee a long and healthy life, but becoming vegan may improve your odds. That's largely because a vegan diet eliminates a number of unhealthful foods, including red and cured meats, which are strongly linked to colon cancer as a hyperlink. Vegans also usually eat far more vegetables and fruits than non-vegetarians. Studies consistently show that people who eat the most fruit and vegetables tend to enjoy a better health. That's a hyperlink. Research also suggests that vegans suffer lower rates of heart disease and diabetes. Again, a hyperlink. This reduced risk is partly due to the fact that vegans are statistically leaner and much less prone to obesity than the general population, but this isn't the whole explanation. Additional benefits probably arise from the low saturated fat intake and from the healthful compounds in plant foods. The potential benefits of ditching dairy, besides all the death that it ensues. A surprisingly large number of vegans will tell you that quitting dairy changed their lives. Some people tolerate milk well and consume plenty of dairy products without repercussions, but milk products can cause all sorts of chronic health ailments from migraines to acne to digestive problems, and may I add, all female cancers. And people of Asian and African descent are often lactose intolerant, as are Jews, which is my family, and suffer gastric distress after consuming dairy products. Many people suffer from these conditions for decades, yet never suspect that the dairy products are to blame. I can personally attest to the health benefits that may accompany going dairy-free. My lifelong severe nasal congestion forever vanished within weeks of eliminating milk products from my diet. With all this in mind, even people swayed by environmental and animal rights concerns might consider quitting dairy products. Given the potential rewards, why not go dairy-free for a couple of weeks to see what will happen? Vegan diets support high levels of fitness. Some people fret that a vegan diet might inhibit athletic performance, but that's not a valid concern. A well-planned vegan diet can in fact support the highest levels of fitness. Both Rich Roll, it's a hyperlink, and Scott Jurek, a hyperlink, two of the world's most acclaimed ultra-endurance athletes, are longtime vegans. But what about sports that require strength and bulk? The bodybuilding community is full of world-class vegan athletes. Look them up on YouTube. And in 2018, 15 members of the Tennessee Titans switched to a vegan diet. That's a football team. Moving from why go vegan to how to go vegan. Given the degree to which our food choices impact animals, our health, and our environment, this essay could offer only the briefest coverage of the most important issues, but you certainly now know enough to think productively about the topic. If there's one point that I hope this essay convincingly made, it's that the way we eat carries enormous consequences. Our food choices matter immensely, not just to us, not just to our body, not just to the animals, but to the carbon footprint of a desperate world experiencing climate change, man-made. Your appreciation for the magnitude of this issue will only grow as you continue exploring, again a hyperlink, the topic, and I hope I've inspired you to dive deeper into learning about food politics. Small changes beat no changes. Many people succumb to the all-or-nothing thinking when it comes to contemplating dietary change. For instance, if they decide that they aren't ready to go vegan, they'll often take no action at all. But even the smallest steps in a plant-based direction can deliver important results while laying the groundwork for future progress. So if you're not ready to commit to major dietary change, take a smaller step. Concepts like meat-free Mondays, reducitarian diets, a little less of all of it, and vegan before 6 offer something for everyone. If there's an animal product you presently eat, that's a typo. If there's an animal product you presently eat that you don't really enjoy, why not cut it out? I remember when I thought I had to have cheese, like in every sandwich. And when I didn't have cheese, I realized I couldn't even tell that it wasn't there because I really couldn't taste it anyway. There's stuff like that. Emphasize exploration. Shifting your diet toward plant-based foods provides all sorts of rewards. If you try new vegan foods at every opportunity, your diet will automatically move in a positive direction. Here's my number one piece of advice. Let's take it in. Number one piece of advice. Don't seek to cut out non-vegan foods from your diet. Instead, crowd them out by finding new vegan foods, again a hyperlink, you prefer. The more new foods you try, the more quickly you will gain ground. As long as you make your transition fundamentally about discovery, switching to a vegan diet requires zero willpower. I've followed a vegan diet for more than 30 years, so I hope you'll take my word for this. As you incorporate more vegan foods into your diet, the amount of pleasure you derive from eating will grow by leaps and bounds. You'll enjoy a wider variety of delicious foods than ever before, and you'll probably feel better as well. Always take the easy route. When transitioning your diet, give yourself every advantage. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. A number of fabulous resources will show you the way, and a little reading pays off big time. My essay on how to go vegan, again a hyperlink, will teach you most of what you need to know in just 30 minutes. After reading it, perhaps read my guide to vegan cooking, again a hyperlink, or explore the most vegan-friendly cuisine, a hyperlink. Above all, enjoy yourself. Food is undeniably one of life's greatest pleasures as you align your diet to your core values and beliefs. That animals are sentient beings, that in treating anything right allows us all to treat each other better. You'll gain a whole new level of satisfaction from eating. And for further readings, here it all is. All the facts, all the endnotes, everything you need. Thanks for bearing with me, people. I know it was long, but it was so important. I hope you benefited from something. As always, like if you like, join us if you haven't. Subscribe. Let me know in the comments below. What were you touched by? Any aha moments? Anything you're willing to commit to? It's just so much. It just hurts my heart so much. But I remain hopeful because just 4 years ago, I was eating meat. I was eating triple cheeseburgers with bacon and all the things. And praise God, that's not my truth today. So I know how possible it is. And I hope you'll join this movement, or at least a plant-based vegan diet. And until we talk again, best of all, know that there's hope and know that you're blessed.